Welcome to Storytimer at Large. Elizabeth Collison and Burndette Baker. This is a long, strange tale of one murder and one missing woman from the early 70s. So we'll start with Burndette Baker. I don't have a photo of her. I wasn't able to find one. But this is the other subject here of our story, Elizabeth Collison, the picture there of that lovely lady smiling with the brunette hair. In 1971, Burndette Baker, age 50, worked at the gas company as a secretary. On April 14th, Burndette was bludgeoned and strangled with a piece of wire in her garage. There was evidence of a struggle. Her empty purse was found in the driveway. Her husband, Roy Baker, woke up from a nap and realized his wife wasn't home yet. He went out to the garage and found her body. He called the police immediately and reported the murder. He was later convicted of her murder. If you were going to kill your spouse in a small town, wouldn't you come up with a better plan to get away with it? The murder looked like a robbery, but it also appears to be the work of a cold-blooded killer. Mrs. Baker was hit on the head with a blunt object and had multiple lacerations to her skull. Wire was twisted around her neck in order to strangle her, maybe to silence her. It could definitely be the husband. I mean, maybe there was an ongoing domestic violence situation. I doubt that, though, and here's why. When Mr. Baker died in 2000, and remember, he was convicted and served time for her murder. When Mr. Baker died in the year 2000, they were buried together. They have a sweet little side-by-side headstone like most every married couple in America. I feel like if family believed that he did it, they would have made other arrangements for his resting place. What if the killer was someone else? What if we now know that a killer lived nearby? Mrs. Baker worked at the gas company. Was there someone in town having trouble paying their gas bill? Maybe they were aggravated at Mrs. Baker in particular. Back then, it wasn't unusual for people to pay their bills in person in a small town. Moving on to the following year. On August 1st, 1972, Elizabeth Collison, she's the lady pictured there, she was 45. She went to a dinner meeting in Washington, Indiana. The meeting was with a client for her bank, according to her family. Who was she meeting? Was there someone in town who targeted her because she was connected to the bank? Was there someone having financial difficulties in town? Elizabeth's car was later found parked back at the bank. Who would kidnap a 45-year-old lady in a small town like Washington, Indiana? Why would someone target her exactly? Who would want to hurt her? Elizabeth Collison has never been found. Washington, Indiana was home to a serial killer in the early 1970s. Nobody knew it yet, though. In September of 1972, that killer would travel to Terre Haute, Indiana, and abduct and murder Pamela Milam. His DNA would not identify him as the killer until 2019, when Parabon Nanolabs developed a DNA sample using family members. That killer's name is Jeffrey Lynn Hand. So keep in mind that 1972 killing of Pamela Milam, and it didn't get solved until 2019. In the summer of 1973, that same killer would abduct a married couple, Jeffrey Wayne and Carol Thomas. They were traveling from Chicago to Evansville, and the killer picked them up south of Terre Haute. The couple was hitchhiking, as many people did in the early 1970s. The killer Jeffrey Lynn Hand tied up Carol and traveled a few miles away with Mr. Thomas, where he then viciously murdered Mr. Thomas by shooting him, stabbing him, and slashing his throat. Carol managed to escape and alert the police. The killer, Jeffrey Lynn Hand, was captured when he returned to the farm for Carol. He had 2 cars, 2 guns, and a knife there. In the past months, he had been fired from 2 Evansville jobs. He was fired from Whirlpool and from Cook & Sons. Someone I contacted who worked with him at Cook & Sons said he had a reputation as someone to avoid. A coworker literally pointed him out discreetly and said, don't go around that guy. Jeffrey Lynn Hand could not hold down a job. How did he have 2 cars? What else was he up to? Why had he driven all the way up toward Terre Haute? Jeffrey Lynn Hand was tried, but not convicted of first-degree murder in the case of Jeffrey Wayne Thomas and the abduction of his wife, Carol. His sanity was questioned. He had outbursts in the courtroom. He threatened journalists. He didn't like people taking his picture. Psychiatrists testified that he was not mentally well. He was sentenced for life to a psychiatric facility. But that's not where he stayed. Unfortunately, he stayed there only 3 years. He was released on a technicality in 1976. And after that, many unsolved murders happened in 1976 and 77 in Indiana. Some of them might be the work of Jeffrey Lynn Hand. I personally suspect him of the murders of Linda Sue Ferry and Christine Kozik. I think he's also responsible for the earlier murders of Vicki Lynn Harrell and Anne Klein. In January of 1978, Hand would attempt to abduct a woman from a Kokomo shopping center. The victim would thankfully escape. Jeffrey Lynn Hand would die in a shootout with the police. He would fade from the news until 2019, when Parabon Nanolabs developed a DNA profile using DNA graciously donated by Hand's sons. This would be compared to the DNA found on Pamela Milam and found to be a match. Were Pamela Milam and Jeffrey Wayne Thomas his only murder victims? I find it incredibly difficult to believe that they were. Hand abducted Pamela Milam and drove her car around for a while in Terre Haute. Terre Haute is a busy college town. This is a killer who is, at that point in 1972, relaxed and confident that he's going to get away with this. In my opinion, he's a very experienced killer already in 1972. He raped Pamela and tied her up and placed her in the trunk of her car. He put an excessive amount of tape around her head and mouth, and he then parked the car and left. We can assume that he then walked to his own car and went home. That level of ease in his actions makes me think he had done this before. And where would a killer start killing? I think he would begin with the people nearby. He might start with people in his own community that aggravated him. If he was having difficulty paying his bills and difficulty financially, it's not too much of a stretch to look at him for the murder of Burndette Baker, who worked at the gas company, and for the disappearance of Elizabeth Collison, who worked at the bank. And this is just a theory, but I would look for Elizabeth Collison in places that Jeffrey Lynn Hand frequented. Did he hunt or spend time in the woods anywhere? Did his home or a home or building that he had access to have a basement or a cellar? In 1973, he was living on an old farm as the caretaker. Did he do farm work in 1971-72? There are a lot of places to conceal a victim on a farm. Mrs. Collison disappeared in August. He could have been comfortably outdoors for the entire time in abducting her and finding a place to put her body. He would not necessarily have needed a building for shelter from the weather because it was August. August 1st, 1972 had a last quarter moon. It would not have been terribly bright out, so he wouldn't have needed a whole lot of concealment if he was out in the open burying her body. Jeffrey Lynn Hand had a wife and young child at the time, so if he took Mrs. Collison, he probably took her to a remote area and not back to his own home. Because he had a family, he was expected to come back home at a certain point. So he probably didn't take a victim terribly far away, probably not hours and hours away, but anything is possible. Where would teenagers go in Washington back then, Washington, Indiana? What was the teenage hangout, the place people would go to park or party on a back road or something like that? In the known murders and murders that he is suspected of, he did not go to great lengths to conceal the victims. He wanted them to be found. I have a sinking feeling that Mrs. Collison might never be found for that reason. He might have left her in the woods or on a sandbar in the White River, which is very nearby Washington. If you are on Google Earth and you're looking at Washington, Indiana, and you kind of move over a little bit to the east of town, there's several oxbows in the river and some farm access roads to fields that look to me like somewhere he could have put her. They look like somewhere he might have gone. There's always hope that a hunter or a hiker or someone like that might find something. I wonder if they kept evidence in either case. I wonder if they fingerprinted Mrs. Collison's car. I wonder if anything still exists that could connect him through DNA to Mrs. Baker's murder. Did they clip and save fingernails? If there was a struggle, Mrs. Baker might have scratched him. Rest in peace, Burndette Baker and Elizabeth Collison. If you have information about the disappearance of Elizabeth Collison or the murder of Burndette Baker, please call the Washington, Indiana Police Department at 812-254-4410.